Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let us continue with our tafsir of Surah Aal-Imraan bihawlillahi wa quwwatih and ayah number 40. قال رب أنى يكون لي غلام وقد بلغني الكبر وامرأتي عاقر قال كذلك الله يفعل ما يشاء. So if you remember from the last ayah, Zakaria alayhi salam is making dua to Allah for a child. Both he and his wife were of an advanced age where you do not expect them to be having any children. So it would take something of a miracle for them to have a child. And yet they are being given glad tidings of a child from the last ayah. So here Zakaria alayhi salam says, Anna, again this word, we have talked about it, means how can this be? How can I have a ghulam, which means a son? Ghulam normally means a young boy. He says that kibr has balaghani, reached me, kibr meaning old age. And he says, my wife is aqir. Aqir from the root letters aqara, which means to cut. So an aqir here is one who is cut off from giving birth, meaning she is barren. Why is she barren? Because of her old age. Old women do not give birth because they cannot give birth. From about 40 years onwards, you do not expect women to give birth. 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, as the age advances, the chances become next to zero. However, some mufassirin like Ibn Abbas said that Zakaria at this time, when he was given the good news, was 120 years old and his wife 98 years old. So the chances for his wife to be giving birth are practically zero. Now here it is important to understand Zakaria alayhi salam is not doubting the ability of Allah Jalla wa Ala to produce a miracle. Indeed, he has just seen a miracle happen with Maryam. But then the question remains, how is it that Zakaria is asking how can the child be born when he himself made the dua for the child? So how can he be so surprised? Well, if you take a dispassionate, rational view of this situation, then indeed it does not make sense. He is the one making the dua, and then he is so surprised when it is answered. How does that make sense? And the answer is, it does not make sense from a rational standpoint of view. However, human emotions do not follow the laws of rationality and logic. Understand that Zakaria alayhi salam was yearning for a child, and he made a desperate dua for a child. And when this was given to him, miraculously of course, he must have been feeling a mixture of joy and shock as well, because old people normally do not give birth. So this would still be a shock to the system. Even if Allah Jalla wa Ala is perfectly capable of doing so, it will still be a shock to the human mind. And so it is a mixture of these emotions that leads him to asking such a question. But human emotions, as we said before, do not need to follow the laws of rationality and logic. It simply does not work that way. And he says, كَذَلِكَ اللَّهُ يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ. كَذَلِك meaning like that. Okay, like what though? Meaning, just like the way you are miraculously being given this child of yours, just like this, in this miraculous nature, Allah does what He wills. Let us continue to the next ayah, number 41. قال رب اجعل لي آية قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس 3 أيام إلا رمزا واذكر ربك كثيرا وسبح بالعشي والإبكار. Again he calls out to his Rabb. He says, Rabbi, O my Rabb, ij'al li, make for me an ayah, a sign. So again he's in a state of joy and shock. He wants a sign that will tell him that his wife is pregnant with his son. Because just understand that Zakaria alayhi salam, he cannot wait for this child. Similar to how a kid may keep asking his father, "Are we there yet?" referring to the holiday destination, because he cannot wait to reach the holiday destination. So clearly Zakaria alayhi salam is overjoyed, and he wants this sign as a precursor to the birth of his child. And the sign which he is given is that he will not speak to the people for 3 days. This is to say, he will be unable to speak to the people for 3 days. So one day he is speaking just as normal, and the very next day he is somehow unable to speak, so he becomes mute, and he can only communicate using sign language. He says, "Illa ramza." So rams means a sign or a symbol. Now at this point we could ask, is the rams, or the sign language, is it from speech, kalam? You could say it is not from kalam because there is no voice and words that can be heard. But on the other hand, you could say that it is from speech because you express what you feel with sign language, and it's the same with speech. So sign language is somewhat ambiguous. It has shades of both speech and non-speech. In any case, the ultimate point is that Zakaria alayhi salam will be miraculously unable to speak to the people for 3 days. However, what makes this even more strange is what Allah says next. وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ كَثِيرًا, and make dhikr of Allah much. وَسَبِّحْ, and make tasbih, that is to say subhanallah, which is when you declare that Allah is far removed from every deficiency. بِالْعَشِي, this is the afternoon, so it is from the Salat al-Dhuhr up till the Salat al-Maghrib, that time period. وَالْإِبْكَارِ, this would be the forenoon, from sunrise till the zenith. Now here the majority of the Mufassirun say that Zakaria alayhi salam, even though during these days he was unable to communicate with the people verbally, he did still maintain the ability to make the dhikr of Allah Jalla wa Ala, which makes this miracle even more bizarre, that he does have the ability to use his tongue for the dhikr, but not to communicate with other people. So just note that Ashi and Ibakar are the two opposites in one day, so forenoon and afternoon. The Quran also uses other words as well. In Surah Ghafir, he says, النَّارُ يُعْرَضُونَ عَلَيْهَا غُدُوًّا وَعَشِيًّا. The fire is presented to them غُدُوًّا in the morning and عَشِيًّا in the afternoon, meaning constantly. Also in Surah An-Nur, يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ فِيهَا بِالْغُدُوِّ وَالْآصَالِ. In the masajid, there are men who make tasbih of Allah by ghudu, this is the morning, and asal, this is the afternoon. So reflecting on these two ayat, we take that Allah Jalla wa Ala can produce miracles which shocks the human mind. We may find that even if someone believes that Allah can do miracles and expects Allah to do miracles, then even still the miracles can leave people shocked and amazed and joyous, just like we find with Zakaria alayhi salam. We find also that Allah Jalla wa Ala has a will. He does as He wills, so He will complete a particular action when He wills, where He wills. And we say this because some people of innovation, they say that Allah does not do what He wills, when He wills, where He wills. In other words, He does not have af'al ikhtiyariya, actions which He does by His choice. But we say no, Allah does have af'al ikhtiyariya. Also we may take that when Zakaria asks for a sign, then from this it is permissible to seek that which will increase you in your iman, because if this sign increases Zakaria in his iman, in this miracle of Allah Jalla wa Ala, then there is no problem in seeking to increase our certainty and strengthen our certainty. It is similar to what Ibrahim alayhi salam asked Allah Jalla wa Ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, which has preceded, how you give rise to the dead. Of course, Ibrahim alayhi salam had full faith, but he wanted to increase his certainty. We also take the virtue of the dhikr of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Not only is it heavy on the scales of good deeds, but it is also therapeutic, in that with the dhikr of Allah do hearts find rest. This is therapy. Notice also how he says, make dhikr of Allah much, but with the tasbih, he says it with the ashi and ibkar. So 2 times mentioned there, but with the dhikr, it is not restricted. It is just make mention of Allah much. So it's unrestricted. It's a similar thing in Surah Al-Ahzab. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ ذِكْرًا كَثِيرًا وَسَبِّحُوهُ بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا. So the dhikr is kathira, much, not restricted. But the tasbih is bukra, in the morning, and asila, in the afternoon. So forenoon and afternoon. So we may say that with the adhkar of Allah Jalla wa Ala, there is no upper limit, except for when we have evidence that there is a limit. For example, the adhkar after the salah, when you say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, these are 33 times each. And then the La ilaha illallah up till the end of it, making the 100th. So we need to stick to these numbers because these are adhkar for a specific time and or place. So we need to stick to the sunnah and not go above or below. So we stick to the numbers where they are given for a particular sabab or a particular cause. But as for just general adhkar, which are not tied to a particular time, place or cause, then there is no upper limit. Make dhikr of Allah dhikran kathira. Let's take ayah number 42. وَإِذْ قَالَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ يَا مَرْيَمُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاكِ وَطَهَّرَكِ وَاصْطَفَاكِ عَلَى نِسَاءِ الْعَالَمِينَ. وَإِذْ, meaning udhkur, make mention, when the malaika said, O Maryam, indeed Allah has istafaki, meaning chosen you, وَطَهَّرَكِ, and purified you, as in purified you from sins and shirk and that type of thing, and has chosen you over the women of the alameen, of mankind. Now this speech, some say it was a normal speech where the words could be heard. And as for malaika, it refers to Jibreel, not every single angel, because there are far too many to count. It is just Jibreel, and the plural is used as a veneration to Jibreel. So there are those who say that Jibreel spoke to her verbally, and there are others who say that this speech of Jibreel to her was an inspiration, because the malaika can still inspire people. In any case, she is honored. Some scholars have used this ayah to suggest that Maryam was a prophet, but what is correct in this matter is that there is no female prophet. The best that Allah Jalla wa Ala describes Maryam is Siddiqa, a truthful woman, or a woman of truth. Okay, so when we say chosen how exactly? Well, it could be a number of ways. Chosen her to be a believer, but also chosen her to serve the masjid, which normally was done by men. It can also mean chosen her to give the miraculous birth to Isa alayhi salam. So like this, he has chosen her in various different ways. And also note that this speech of the malaika to Maryam was before she was given the glad tidings of a miraculous birth. Now here it should be noted that there are quite a few narrations which talk about the Prophet ﷺ in Jannah marrying Maryam and also Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, as well as Kulthum, the sister of Musa ﷺ. And all of these narrations, of which there are plenty, are extremely weak, and some of them indeed fabricated. So we pay no attention to these narrations, and we keep quiet about these matters. As to who the husband of Maryam would be in Jannah, as well as Asiya, as well as Kulthum, we have no idea. These are the matters of the unseen, and we keep quiet about it. Also note, when he says Tahharaki, purified you, this is to say purified you from evil characteristics and evil behavior and this evil type of mindset and evil types of beliefs. When he says he has chosen you over the Alameen, we said Alameen can be translated to worlds. In this context, it means above mankind or all the nations. And we may say that she is from the best of women, from the past nations as well as from the present nations as well. So from all the nations, in other words, of all time, because we have other narrations which tell us such as well. So reflecting on this particular ayah, we take that Allah Jalla wa Ala chooses certain people, and that's His divine prerogative to choose whomsoever He wills. And He has chosen Maryam alayhi salam as the superior woman above all other women. And we also take that Allah Jalla wa Ala, He is the one ultimately who purifies people from shirk and from evil characteristics. So if that's the case, then it is upon us to make dua to Allah Jalla wa Ala to purify us from evil characteristics and evil beliefs and unrighteous actions and so on. Turn to Allah and make dua to Him for purification. هذا والله أعلم.